Welcome everyone, I'm Jordan Sharp. As we are finally done with the NFL Draft, it's time to look at some winners and some losers from the 2015 NFL Draft. And while I don't think any team won or lost the draft, there are some potential teams that could have won and could have lost though. And I think that there are a couple of teams here on the loser side that if things don't go their way could really be regretting some of their plays here from the 2015 draft. We'll start it off with the Carolina Panthers. I'm not sure what the Panthers were doing here. I wanted to see them go a little bit more positional needs in the first couple of rounds, but they instead kind of looked like they were going best player available, and they drafted in their first two picks a couple of carbon copies of guys they already have. A little bit surprising, I think. They already have Thomas Davis at outside linebacker, but then they drafted Shaq Thompson with their first overall pick. I think I would have liked to see them go a different direction with that first overall pick. I think they could have used an offensive lineman earlier in the draft, but I think Thompson and Thomas Davis are obviously going to be really good pairings on that 4-3 scheme on outside linebacker, but I think they might have sacrificed some of their needs in other places to go after the best player available. I think they did the exact same thing in the second round. They drafted Devin Funchess in the second round, a wide receiver, basically a carbon copy of Kelvin Benjamin. So very surprised with some of the Panthers picks. I think they were definitely going for best player available, at least for what they thought. I think they may have sacrificed some needs elsewhere. Another team that I think were going definitely best player available, or at least trying to, were the Indianapolis Colts, and I don't think it worked out for them because they drafted the 6th wide receiver off the board in the first round in Philip Dorsett, and that's after signing Andre Johnson in free agency. Now, obviously, Andre Johnson's on the downside of his career, but if he's healthy, he's still going to be one of the most productive receivers and definitely a great slot receiver next to T.Y. Hilton for at least the next 2 or 3 years, hopefully, for them. And so I'm not sure about drafting Philip Dorsett using that first overall pick on that play as well. And I think I would have liked to see them go a little bit more defense up front, maybe defensive line, defensive end, somewhere around there in the first round, and instead of going with a wide receiver, especially the 6th wide receiver in the first round, a little bit questionable here. Another team that I think is everyone's new favorite dumpster fire is the San Francisco 49ers. They fired their coach. They lost their best 2 cornerbacks in free agency, and then they didn't draft any quarterbacks. That's a loser already in itself. If you don't go after a top-tier corner early in the draft, there was plenty of corner depth in this draft. I think they could have went there in the first round. They instead went for a defensive lineman. Not sure where they were going with this draft as well. They also drafted a punter, which I think automatically drops you down to a no greater than a C grade in the NFL draft as well. So I think potentially they could have been definitely the biggest loser in the draft of the NFC West, because I think a lot of the other teams really got better, especially the Cardinals and the Rams. Last team I think is really speculative, and we won't know whether they lost here for a while, or we may know, relatively soon, depending on what happens. But if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers whiffed on Jameis Winston, or if Marcus Mariota turns out to be the next coming of, what we thought Colin Kaepernick could be, I think that the Bucs are going to absolutely be listed as one of the losers, if not the biggest loser of the 2015 draft. If Winston gets in trouble, if Winston doesn't perform on the field, maybe throws a ton of picks, turns the ball over a lot, and loses favorability in Tampa, I think, and if Mariota turns out to be a great player, it's going to be really hard to label the Bucs anything but a huge loser of the 2015 draft. But we won't know that for a while, though. But that'll do it for me this time. For your losers of the NFL draft, make sure you check out some of the winners as well. But until then, I'm Jordan Sharp, and this has been another edition of the Sharp Pick.